Please go. Hello, everybody. Since it is time, we would like to start the official UN HLPF side event, Dialogue on SDG Target 8.7 to end child labor by 2025. How can we achieve a child labor-free world? My name is Hideki Wakabayashi, Advocacy Officer of ACE, Action Against Child Exploitation. And first of all, thank you very much for attending this event out of many side events in the United headquarters of the United Nations. As you know that this year, 2025, is a target year. In other words, deadline for achieving SDGs Target 8.7, the elimination of child labor. But in reality, the latest global estimate shows that the 138 million children are still engaged in child labor. So in this event, although a goal was set, but unfortunately it has not been achieved yet. But why was that? What went wrong? Did anything work well? Because the number of child laborers has been decreasing tremendously from the almost half of compared with the 2000 figures. So the purpose of this event, I believe, is clarify those points and reaffirm our commitment to achieve child labor-free world. I hope that we will reach a consensus on how we should move forward from here by the end of this event. And now I'd like to ask Yuka Iwatsuki-san, President of ACE, Action Against Child Exploitation, explain ground rules, including safeguarding policy of children and youth. Thank you very much. Yuka-san, you have the floor.
Yes. So everyone, thank you for joining. And Yuko, could you? Yeah, thank you. So I think when you register this event, you have agreed to abide by the code of conduct. It's on?
It's
Can
on.
you hear me well? Shall I make it closer? Louder. Okay, so there are the ground rules of this session. The purpose of this is to protect children and youth rights. And we have a safeguarding policy on children and youth to protect them from any harms that deprive their rights. So thank you for agreeing on the code of conduct, and please abide by it while the session is going on. We have one youth panelist today, but she have agreed to be taken a photograph. Yeah, so it's okay to take a photo, but please mindful of the respectful conduct during this session. And if you find any concerns, please contact the email address here so that we can address the issue. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tim Ryan, chairperson of the Global March Against Child Labor, and very pleased to welcome you all here today. I want to start this program with a keynote address from a very distinguished speaker, Ambassador Claudia Fuentes Julio, who's the chair of Alliance 8.7, the international effort to basically work on the child labor issue. 2025 is here. We haven't succeeded, but these are opportunities for us to move forward. I'd like to introduce Ambassador Julio for her comments.
Can you wait a second?
Yes, certainly. Would you like me to introduce the panelists in the meantime, or?
Just a second.
Sure.
Yuka-san, okay, I understood.
Good afternoon to you all, and thank you for joining us. As chair of the Alliance 8.7 Global Partnership, I'm very pleased to be addressing this high-level political forum side event on ending child labor. I would like to thank the co-organizers of this event, Action Against Child Exploitation, Global March Against Child Labor, the Government of Ghana, and the Child Labor Coalition. We are here because we are united in our commitment to confront one of the most pressing global challenges of our time, the persistence of child labor. The new global estimates on child labor released by the ILO and UNICEF in June this year provide some welcoming news. They show that in the last 4 years, child labor decreased from 160 to fewer than 138 million children in child labor. This means that child labor prevalence was reduced by almost 20%, from 9.6 to 7.8%. The number of children in hazardous work saw an even greater reduction, from 79 to 54 million. From a gender perspective, 59 million girls and 78 million boys are engaged in child labor. However, when excessive household chores are taken into account, the number of girls in child labor surpasses that of boys. When viewing through a sectoral lens, agriculture continues to be the leading sector for child labor, representing 61% of all cases. Services follow with 27%, including activities like domestic work and market vending, while industry accounts for 13%, covering areas such as mining and manufacturing. From a global regional perspective, we can fortunately say that every region made progress. In Asia and the Pacific, the number of children in child labor decreased by 43%. In Latin America and the Caribbean, there was an 11% reduction in the number of children in child labor, and prevalence fell by 8%. There are also early signs of a long overdue breakthrough in sub-Saharan Africa, where child labor prevalence dropped by 10%. These advances have contributed to a global reduction of 108 million in child labor since 2000, even as the global child population grew by 230 million during the same period. But while we are now on a path of progress, the world has failed to meet Sustainable Development Goal 8.7. All countries have committed to take immediate and effective measures to end child labor in all its forms by 2025, and we did not succeed. Looking towards and beyond 2030, achieving the elimination of child labor will require significantly multiplying the pace of progress. We have learned a lot over the past 24 years since the adoption of ILO Convention 182 on the worst form of child labor. We know what works: tackling the root causes of child labor by ensuring access to free, quality education, universal social protection, and decent work for adults and young people of legal working age. In this context, partnership and collective action are essential to driving progress. This is the relevance of Alliance 8.7, the global partnership working to eradicate forced labor, modern slavery, human trafficking, and child labor. Alliance 8.7 plays a particularly important role in fostering cooperation and coordinated efforts to tackle forced labor, modern slavery, human trafficking, and child labor. It is a unique initiative within the UN system. It brings together diverse stakeholders to strengthen engagement and coordination at both global and national levels. The Alliance provides a platform for accelerate action, exchange information and promising practices, and drive information towards achieving SDG 8.7. At the national level, 38 countries are leading the way as Alliance 8.7 Pathfinder or candidate countries. They are developing and implementing roadmaps that address all 4 elements of Target 8.7 in a coherent and coordinated plan. These roadmaps are in an innovative policy mechanism developed through inclusive processes and comprehensive approaches, with countries monitoring progress and sharing experiences. The Alliance also brings together a broad network of over 1,400 partners and has 3 action groups, one on supply chain led by ILO, on migration led by IOM, and on agriculture led by FAO, in close coordination with members of the International Partnership for Cooperation and Child Labor in Agriculture. The action groups support policy and advocacy, advanced research and knowledge sharing, and promote cooperation and country-level action in these key thematic areas. I encourage all governments and organizations who share the Alliance goals and are not yet partners to get involved and join the Alliance. Countries are also invited to take further steps by coming to become a Pathfinder country. Together, we can continue to accelerate progress in addressing child labor and uphold every child's right to be free from it. Thank you for your attention, and I wish you a very successful event.
Welcome, everybody. And we'd like to thank, I get an echo here too. I'd like to thank Ambassador Julio for those remarks. We didn't get to hear all of them here. She was really setting the stage for our discussion today in terms of the amount of child labor that has actually come down since 2000, and Brother Hideki mentioned as well. So we're here today. I'd like to introduce the panelists for the dialogue on SDG Target 8.7. Before I do that, however, I would like to extend warm thanks and gratitude toward the organizers of this program, Action Against Child Exploitation, ACE, in Japan, the government of Ghana, the Child Labor Coalition in the United States, and my own organization, Global March Against Child Labor. Our distinguished panelists today, I will just run through them in the order that they will be appearing. First, we will have Esther Ofori Ajimon, head of the Child Labor Unit, Labor Department, Ministry of Labor, Jobs and Employment, Government of Ghana. Will be followed by Yuka Iwatsuki, president of ACE, who will be talking about their work, followed by Daniel Magajes, a U.S. account manager at Tony's Open Chain, at Tony's Chocolonely Company, followed by Reed Mackey, who is the coordinator of the Child Labor Coalition here in the U.S. And finally, we welcome Jacqueline Aguilar, a former child labor in agriculture, who will be here to share her experiences and her ideas for how our work can be improved. I don't mean to put a lot of pressure on you. But so I want to thank everybody for being here. There are a few key questions that we're addressing here. And fortunately, we have all of the relevant sectors in the room. It's going to take everyone, including governments, CSOs, trade unions, companies, to address this issue. And we've seen that, and I think it's safe to say, the decline in child labor over the last decade or so has very much been in formal supply chains. That's great. That's a real success story. Now we have to find ways to extend that. For someone who has a real comprehensive perspective on this, I'd like to introduce Esther Ofori Ajimon, as I said, the head of the Child Labor Unit, Government of Ghana, and to hear her contributions. Thank you very much, Esther.
A very good afternoon to all of you. I bring you warm greetings from Ghana, the land of milk and honey, and obviously Gold Coast. I want to extend our deepest appreciation to ACE and to all the panelists involved here and to partners online who are listening to us. I think that Ghana has been put on the spotlight for some time because of the commitment and dedication that the government, through the Ministry of Labor and Jobs and Employment, have dedicated towards child labor elimination in Ghana. And so I'll first start. I think successive governments over the years have made strenuous efforts in terms of working together in a very collaborative manner together with our partners, direct intervention on the grounds to ensure that child labor is eliminated, a lot of policies, program enhancements, interventions here and there to ensure. But I think that this has always been the case. I think we've started this partnership together, and I am very happy Tim is here together with Tony's Chocolonely, David, and the other partners, panelists seated here, because we started the journey far back as 2000 in Ghana, trying to eliminate child labor. There have been success stories, but hey, there are issues, there are problems, there are gaps. And so what haven't we done right? Why have we not achieved 2025 together with the rest of the world? what is lacking. So in 2018, we birthed a dream. Ghana birthed a dream. What was the dream about? We thought that as a government, what could we do differently? What should be the narrative? What should be the greater impact that we achieve? How can we protect our children to be able to upheld their rights and ensure that they are protected from harm and do not go to work but stay in the classrooms? What will be the need for government to be able to work together with partners and align with the national goal towards child labor elimination? Through this dream, we thought that there was a need where we could actually level on existing interventions on the ground, and that is where Ghana, together with other partners, particularly the ILO and the Japanese government, through the Japanese, through JICA, we decided to bring this dream to bear. And in building this dream, we were very much hinged on looking at how we would be able to use the integrated area-based approach. And it's just that when any partner wants to enter into any district to work on child labor, you will ensure that we do not actually tackle the issue through sector-specific approaches, but we are looking at a much broader spectrum where we are dealing with all forms of child labor, including the worst forms of child labor. And so the idea of the child labor free zone was birthed. And I'm proud to say that this is one of the actions in the National Plan of Action towards the elimination of child labor. And because government has a direct focus, has a direct vision, we thought that all partners working in Ghana across should be able to align with the National Action Plan such that we have a common goal, we have a common vision, clear targets set and objectives to achieve the impact that we desire as a country. And so from 2018 till now, the country has been able to develop the protocol, what we call the protocols and guidelines for achieving child labor free zones in Ghana. And these protocols and guidelines are hinged on three key things. One, we want to ensure efficiency and sustainability of the process. We want to ensure that our MMDAs are motivated, they are able to sustain child labor elimination and not project-driven activities on the ground. We want to ensure that partners are working in a very collaborative manner and ensure that accountability works for us. And again, how are we able to achieve certain parameters and measures that we think that as a government, we should be able to give our children and not go back to work. So my presentation, next slide, we'll be looking at how this child labor free zone has been birthed, the implementation, are there challenges, are there gaps, what is the way forward for government of Ghana together with certain partners. So my presentation will be looking at the background and context. What is the child labor free zone framework about? What are the implementation modalities and then the assessment modalities? Next slide, please. So I think I've given a lot of background why we started this process. And I'm sure Tim here has said about the famous Stockholm model in Ghana. And this Stockholm model sees or highlights a lot of working collaboratively in a collaborative manner to ensure the desired impacts we want as a country. And again, leveraging on already existing systems and structures to be able to deal with all forms of child labor. So when we talk about the child labor free zone, somebody might be asking, what is it about? It is just empowering communities, because in Ghana, a lot of the child labor issues happen in our communities and districts. And we do not want child labor elimination to be project-driven, as I've said. So why don't we empower the community members? Why don't we give them the needed resources? Why don't we build their capacities, district line agencies who have the capacity to protect children? Why don't we build the already existing systems and structures on the ground to be able to respond to child labor issues when they are detected in those districts? And so from the national level through to the sub-national levels, all these processes have been taken into consideration and the framework has been birthed. And so the entire framework looks at providing a guide on the measure and structures that need scope to put in place or strengthen communities to ensure protection of children for all forms of child labor and exploitation and to secure their total development. And this framework is in two parts. So we are looking at the framework and then how are we able to assess the impact on the ground? So we want to say that in as much as we are putting a lot of effort on the ground, are we able to assess our efforts? Are we leveraging on existing systems and structures to say that whatever interventions we are happening on the ground is actually yielding results? Are we just working and not asserting ourselves as a country based on zonal councils and area councils within a given metropolitan to say that, yes, children are eliminated when children are found in child labor, there are already existing structures, their systems to respond to these children. And children who are already at risk are prevented from entering child labor. So that's the entire, but how can we do this? We cannot do this because there's a gap. A lot of partners are working on child labor, but they're working in silos. There's no coordinated effort and manner. Interventions are dispersed across the districts. And very much importantly, a lot of resources are put into it, but we don't actually get the impact that we want. And so based on the reviews that we'll always get, the problem still lingers on. So the whole idea of the child labor free zone is that why don't we bring together partners to work in a very collaborative manner, leverage on the scarce resources we have, build on the capacity of community levels to be able to take up this fight themselves, so that we have a sustainable way of eliminating child labor without children going back to child labor. So that's basically what the child labor free zone seeks to do. And the assessment is to ensure that once the interventions on the ground are ongoing, we'll be able to get the needed results, be able to assess communities by the impacts they've made themselves, and then we'll be able to see where we are going as a country. Next slide, please. So yes, what is the goal of the child labor free zone? Basically, I've already mentioned, we want to promote the strengthening of systems and structures. So there are already existing systems and structures on the ground. We have community child protection committees. There's a child labor monitoring system on the ground. We have district line protection agencies who have come together to form coalitions to ensure that children are protected. Is it necessary for us to duplicate efforts? No. We think that we need to strengthen the systems and structures on the ground such that any child at risk or any child in child labor is prevented and given the needed remediation support that the child wants to. Next slide, please. So the objectives of the child labor free zone. One, we want to set conditions and provide a guide for establishing a geographical area as child labor free. Two, we want to set criteria and modalities for assessing the conditions within the geographical area for declaration as child labor free. And I'm very happy and proud to announce that in October this year, Ghana will be declaring our zones as child labor free. And for me, this is a giant step for us because to be able to declare, I thought you were going to give us a big clap, because it's not easy to be able to declare certain zones. And that has been done because we have been able as a government steer the affairs of our partners. Government is in the driving seat. Government would want all our partners to align with the national plan of action such that when these zones are declared as child labor free zones, partners within the supply, working within the supply chain, align to national government policies so that we'll be able to declare most zones. And I'm also happy to say that I think we should give honor to whom is due. I think JICA through ACE has been very much helpful with this process. And for the first time since 2000, Ghana has experienced a lot of collaborative achievements and opportunities among government. For the first time, UNICEF, ILO, International Cocoa Initiative, the World Bank, and other partners came together to say that, yes, we want to work together. We want to leverage on existing systems and structures. We want to put our resources together. And that is how come we've gotten here. And it is because of these great collaboration steps that we are taking. It is because of how government is now in the driving seat. It's because of how we are able to bridge the gaps and then leverage on existing systems and structures to respond to children. And I'm also very happy to say that this has actually yielded a lot of results for us. And in the implementation of our national plan of action, based on the reviews that is done annually, we are actually getting a lot of children out of child labor. And the national statistics prove to it and show to that. And so looking, next slide, please. What are the core principles that we intend to achieve with this? We want to respect children's rights to education and want to say it is non-negotiable. We want all our children of school-going age to be in school. We want our children, all forms of child labor, to be eliminated using the integrated area-based approach, which I've already indicated. We want all children out of school who are at risk of child labor to get out of child labor. We want community participation and ownership. I think that's where the issue is. When the community members are not owning the child labor elimination process, projects will come and it will just die away because they have time frames, they have interest, and once it dies away, that is the end. But when community members are empowered, and for the first time throughout the assessment modalities in one of our zonal councils, community themselves have done pre-assessments of interventions in their community and catchment areas, and they've been able to let us know that they are ready for the main assessment, which they have qualified, and that is done because all partners have been able to work collaboratively. Next slide, please. So when we say a child labor free zone, what do you want to mean? We mean a geographical area and a geographical area means an area, zonal or town council in which conditions, structures, support systems, and child development facilities are put in place and functional towards the elimination of all forms of child labor and the total development of children is achieved. And so I want to bring my presentation to a close to say that yes, government through the collaborative efforts of other partners are making a giant strides. We have tested the documents, we have seen where the gaps are, and we are now replicating the assessment of the documents and implementation of documents in other zonal councils to see how we can build upon the existing structures and the document to be able to get the design. And I've already indicated that we are very happy to declare some of our zones. And I think in Africa, Ghana will be the first country to be able to declare our zones as child labor free. And I think this is a great win for all of us. And I think together we can achieve this goal of 2025, which is the end of SDG. Thank you very much.
Whoops.
You can use that mic.
Okay, that's just easy. Good.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Esther. This is a really comprehensive presentation. I just a couple of real quick comments. It's really important, I think, to see how Ghana has been a pioneer in this and out front compared to so many other countries, and the comprehensive way in which they're dealing with it. I think it's a good example of the way in which a lot of governments can begin to adopt these policies and implement them. So thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Next, we would like to invite Yuka Iwatsuki from ACE to give her presentation. And take it away.
All right. So thank you for coming, everyone. My name is Yuka. I'm president of ACE. Let me introduce some of the works that we've done regarding child labor. Next, please. So let me introduce ACE. ACE was started by students, actually including me, back in 1997, inspired by the Global March Against Child Labor and Kailash Satyarthi, who is the Nobel laureate, Peace Prize laureate in 2014. So our area of focus is the elimination of child labor and promotion of children's rights. And we were awarded the Japan SDG Award in 2023. Actually, our name is in Japanese Voluntary National Review because of that. And we also work on children's issue in Japan as well. Next, please. So Chocolate with Happiness project is what we have been doing recently, and this aims to solve the child labor issue in cocoa industry through fair and sustainable chocolate business and consumption. So what we do is we do the project in Ghana, and we also support building child labor free zone. And we also do a lot of work on public awareness, education in Japan, and we partner with many companies, chocolate companies, to work together and industry collaboration. And we also do advocacy work. So we also do G7, G20 advocacy work, as well as UN business and human rights related advocacy work. Next, please. So this is the project we are doing in Ghana. It's called Smile Ghana project. And it has 3 pillars. One is child protection and education. So we try to bring children in school and retain in school. So we also need the community to improve the school conditions so that the children can be retained. The second pillar is the better income and household finance. And some of the farmers do not know how to grow the cocoa. So we teach them how, and also we facilitate in learning how to grow rice recently. Rice consumption has risen, I think, in Ghana, and they can sell and they can also eat. So it will supplement the deficit of the income. And third pillar is the capacity building of the community. And it is a very important pillar because it would sustain the community to work further after we finish the project in like 3 years. So establishing child labor monitoring system is a very key. Community Child Protection Committee is the volunteer people who will be identifying children who are in working. So when they find children, they will talk to them and they will visit the house and they will try to bring the children to school. And they also connect the family to other support so that they can get support to go to school. Next, please. Yeah, and this is very small, so small letters, so I won't explain much. But one of the things we have been working together with the government of Ghana is supporting this child labor-free zone concept. So what we did initially is to make this guideline. The idea of child labor-free zone was already in the National Action Plan of Ghanaian government. So next step was to make a guideline so that people will know what kind of child labor-free zone it would be and what are the criteria. So we developed that together with Deloitte, actually, and then the JICA came in, and then now currently the JICA is supporting the project to implement child labor-free zone system in Ghana. So we are one of the implementing partners to realize that in Ghana. Next, please. So what we do in Japan is to work with companies, and we have been working individually with many companies in Japan, and we get some donation from the sales of the chocolate. We also do a lot of talk with them. Last year, I think we brought some of the company people to Ghana to see how things are there, and also one of the big companies in Japan changed the procurement system so that they will procure more sustainable and child-friendly cocoa. And it was a big impact in the industry because the people who are selling a cocoa product have to change what they buy as well. So these are the things that we've been doing in Japan in relation to corporations. Next, please. And another thing we're doing is we are part of the platform for sustainable cocoa in developing countries. This is established by JICA in 2020, and this is a collaborative platform. So next slide, please. And with so many major companies of chocolate in Japan, and this year we did a press conference to show the commitments of the companies to eradicate child labor around the June 12th, or the World Day Against Child Labor. Next, please. I'm ending, yes. Yes, and one of the things is that we are working together to agree on key actions to eliminate child labor in corporate sectors. So these are the items, angles that they pursue, and depending on where the company sits, the gravity of the issue differs. So that's how, and they report the progress every year so that it would enhance their efforts in that manner. Next, please. Yes, and our purpose is unleashing the power of the world, empowering children with freedom, empowering all for transformation. So I'm hoping that our work will unleash the power everyone has toward the goal to eliminate child labor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yuka. I think ACE demonstrates something that I think is really important, and that is the ability of an NGO or community-based organization to be able to connect both with the companies and with government. And this is, I think, really important, especially on the company side. And we're going to hear from a company here today. We're very fortunate to have Daniel Magajes, the U.S. account manager for Tony's Open Chain, Tony's Chocolonely, to address the child labor issue from a corporate perspective. Thank you. Thanks.
I do have some talking notes. Awesome. Thank you, Yuka and Esther, for those speeches. This up here. There we go. I think ideally we would have had our human rights specialist, Julie, or our global policy lead at Tony's. They're based in Amsterdam, so I'm going to play messenger as best as I can today. We'll start with a quick intro to who we are. That is Tony's Open Chain. It is the sourcing model behind Tony's Chocolonely. I assume that is the brand that you guys know it as, right? As a chocolate bar that sits on shelf It's built around 5 sourcing principles. One is traceability, and we'll dig into that today, really around our social traceability pillar. The second is paying a higher price. The third, the concept of strong farmers. Long-term partnerships is the 4th sourcing principle, and the 5th around productivity and quality. The goal is really to create a system where cocoa is sourced responsibly, not just by Tony's, but by other companies as well, and taking full ownership of what's happening in their supply chains. And so through Tony's Open Chain, we've built that structure with 19 partner cooperatives in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. And we invite other companies through Tony's Open Chain to source cocoa and join us in adopting this same model. To take ownership, we have to understand the realities, and one of the most urgent realities in cocoa is child labor. It's not something any one actor can solve alone. It is, takes collective action between companies who source cocoa, like Tony's, civil society, NGO, governments. The partnership in Ghana led by ACE is a great example of that collaboration. I know we've also worked closely with Esther and the team at the Ministry of Labor in Ghana. So thank you to you both. Through these partnerships, we're able to better understand the conditions in cocoa growing communities. I come at this more so from a commercial side, right? Working with companies who are sourcing cocoa through our open chain model, and hopefully we'll be able to announce more companies in the coming year, but really helping them step into this responsibility. But the real work is really being led by our teams at origin, right? In Cote d'Ivoire, in Ghana, our members in home-based offices in Amsterdam, our human rights specialists, Julie, our global policy lead, Belinda, they're working together incredibly hard with our teams at origin to make this happen every day. I joined the business about 6 months ago, so still relatively new to the space, but with that gave me the chance to see things with fresh eyes. And I think what struck me the most and really early on at Tony's is really how central this work is to how we operate. It's not a side initiative. And as I've been learning about the realities on the ground, it's clear that many of these challenges, like child labor as an example, aren't unique to cocoa, but for Tony's Open Chain, cocoa makes them more visible in a way that demands action. And that's why we've implemented a child labor monitoring and remediation system, right? A CLMRS across our entire supply chain. 100% coverage. That means all the cooperatives in our network implement CLMRS, and every farmer household is included. There are other systems, right, that maybe only monitor a portion of the supply chain or rotate visits every couple of years. Every household in the Tony's Open Chain network is visited annually, and these visits are carried out by trained community facilitators. Esther, you were mentioning how important it is to empower the communities in which we're operating in. These community facilitators are members of the cooperative teams who live in the communities, know the families, they're trusted locally, and then they're further supported by monitoring and remediation agents, right, who help coordinate the work, ensure the remediation plans are, 1, relevant, and 2, well-resourced. This isn't about enforcement. If there's one thing I've learned, it's not about catching children. If you look at all of the cases that we identify, 95% of them are identified through open conversations with families and children themselves. That's the heart of our approach, right? Building trust, understanding the social realities, and working together to find better options. And I think a great example of that is what we've done with labor brigades, right? And introducing them to families, not just as a remediation tool, but also as a prevention tool, right? Helping them access safe labor alternatives before child labor becomes a necessity. I guess my one takeaway here would be, really, like I said before, it's understanding the realities of the households and the families in our supply chains in order to take responsibility. For us at Tony's Open Chain, that means taking the accountability for protecting more than 50,000 children in the households that we source from. And that's also why we don't work with just families, but with governments and civil society to improve the broader enabling environment. That means access to education, health resources, safe drinking water, monitoring and remediation alone isn't enough. Real change comes from contextualized sensitization, true collaboration with partners along our chain, and study progress at the community level. So as a closing thought, I'll say, like, at the core of all of this is really belief that children's rights are human rights. Every child has a right to be safe, to go to school, to have a say in their future. These aren't abstract ideals. They're really practical foundations for a more just, a more sustainable cocoa sector. That's what we're doing at Tony's Open Chain. It's what we're built on, and that's what we're here to keep building together with everyone here. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Daniel. And I think there are two things that you said there that were really unusual. I don't hear from a lot of companies. Paying a higher price. The fact that you guys are willing to do that, that is one of the most significant aspects of this issue. And of course, the CLMRS, the coverage you have on that is really impressive. So this is the kind of work that needs to, as you say, continue in partnership. So thank you very much. Next, we'd like to invite Mr. Reed Mackey from the Child Labor Coalition to give his perspective on child labor in general, or the U.S.
Yeah, I do want to talk a little bit about the explosion of hazardous work in the U.S., which we've seen the last few years. I am Reed Mackey. I'm the Director of Child Labor Advocacy for the National Consumers League and the coordinator of the Child Labor Coalition. Next. That's a short list of our members. We have about 37, 38 members. And you can see ACE is not on that list, but they're dear in our heart. They've been a member for several years. Human Rights Watch, Free the Slaves, National Education Association is the largest union in the U.S. Next. So we do work both on domestic and international issues. I wanted to bring a lot of photos so that folks who aren't familiar with the problem could see what child labor looks like. Next. We do a wide range of advocacy activities. I think one of the things that separates us from some groups is that we are heavily involved in congressional work. So we draft legislation with congressional partners, and we work very hard to advance that legislation because we're seeking systemic change. We don't do any direct service. We're not feeding kids. We're not doing building schools. Those are all part of the solution, but our approach is a little different. Next. So our domestic work has been focused for a long time on child farm work. And this is a child farm worker harvesting onions, I think. And we're going to hear a little bit about this from Jacqueline, but there are giant gaps in our child labor laws that allow children to work long hours in the fields beginning at age 12. And they can't do any other kind of work in the US. It's hazardous work. It's dangerous work. There are pesticides, sharp tools. Next. This is one of the reasons why the US has never ratified Convention 138. They simply can't because they haven't addressed these agricultural loopholes. Next. And I want to talk a little bit about tobacco because it's a toxic crop. This teenager, is wearing a black plastic garbage bag because the nicotine that poisons her it's so invasive, and she's desperately trying to avoid getting nicotine poisoning. Next. In the US, you have to be 21 to buy cigarettes, yet we let 12-year-olds go into a farm and harvest tobacco. Next. And it does make the kids sick. It makes the adults sick too. But we just think the adults at least they have more resources to handle the health consequences. Dizziness, nausea, headaches, fainting, vomiting are all symptoms. And there's been recent research that suggests that the kids are absorbing large amounts of nicotine. Next. And it's like a triple whammy of conditions. Nicotine poisoning, pesticide exposure, extreme heat. Next. And I want to introduce you to a couple of kids that I met in the fields when I did some field investigations. Christina was 9, harvesting onions with her family. Very tiny hands. She was having a hard time with those scissors. Next. Sergio was only 10. He was working barefoot, no protection against the sun or pesticides, wearing a little soccer outfit. He had cut his finger. Next, he worked as hard as a grown man. He was really incredible. Next, please. This is Yesenia. You know, she looks a little sad there. It was very hard work. She was working with 3 generations of her family. So farm work is a generational thing, and the poverty goes from generation to generation. Next. And Mariella was quite ill. I think she was having an allergic reaction to the onions she was harvesting, but she could barely talk. I asked her dad, you know, why is she out here? And he said, well, we need the money. Poverty is the driver in the US and abroad. Next. So in the last 3 years, we've seen this explosion of hazardous work. It started with Hyundai supply chain in Alabama. Teens were found working in factories doing really dangerous metal stamping type work. And then we moved on to meatpacking, New York Times exposés. There was a 300% increase in violations over an 8-year period. And we saw some tragic deaths in 2023. And the states at the same time were rolling back protections. Next. Yeah, the Hyundai findings were in at least 10 facilities, and the kids were mostly from Central America. There were a lot of unaccompanied minors that were breaking into this type of work. They're desperate for income. And why Alabama? Why did this happen in Alabama? Well, the labor rights framework in Alabama is quite weak. So it wasn't really a surprise that it happened in a state like Alabama. Next. And the meatpacking findings really got a tremendous amount of publicity. We saw kids working the night shift, cleaning the facilities and getting caustic chemical burns. So really quite dangerous. A lot of famous companies on that list. Next. And here's some pictures of the kids working in these factories, working all night again. Dangerous chemicals. Next. That's another child. It looks like the same photo, but it's actually a different kid. 13-year-olds saying they were 34. And the company said they did. Oh, we didn't know. Next. And then Hannah Dreier comes out with 4 exposés in about a year that really opened a lot of people's eyes. It won her the Pulitzer Prize. It really created a lot of impetus to work on these issues. Next. And at the same time, the Biden administration was finding thousands of kids working in fast food. Some, as you can see here, were working the drive-through in a Kentucky McDonald's at 2 a.m., 10 years old. Next. And then, as I mentioned, the states have been rolling back protections. Florida's assembly nearly passed legislation to allow teens to work all night. That came a whisker away from passing. Next. And Congress, the US Congress has introduced a lot of great bills that would solve a lot of these problems, but there's no bipartisan support to speak of, just a minimal amount. We really need Republicans to advance this. Next. And the enforcement actions coming out of wage and hour are really have stopped pretty much since the Trump administration began. So that's a big concern. Next. I just need 30 more seconds, Tim.
Okay.
Okay, and we know from Project 2025, the Trump administration thinks that teens should do hazardous work because they want to do hazardous work. That's their argument. So, so USDOL is seeking changes to hazardous work rules that will allow kids to drive commercially. We're very concerned about that. I think there's just one more slide that I need to cover. A big thing that's happened to affect international work is that ILAB, the part of DOL that issues forced labor and child labor grants, has seen all of their grants ended. This is really tragic because ILAB was a leader in the global movement to help remediate child labor. So I'm going to stop there. We can follow up with questions, but I'll stop right there. It was a really tragic thing to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Reed. I think you presented a whole lot of extremely serious and scary information there. I'm not going to do a recap of it. In the interest of time, I think we'll move along. We'll have time for the question and answer period. I'd like to invite Jacqueline Aguilar to come and give her observations about the child labor situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. Hello, my name is Jacqueline Aguilar. I'm a recent graduate from Adams State University in Colorado. I'm a first-generation college student, a child labor survivor, and a community advocate. Saying child labor survivor still feels really unreal, but it's my truth. I grew up in a migrant farm worker family. My parents worked day in, day out in the field to provide for us. I remember being a little girl and waiting for my dad to come home from work, and he would touch my face, and I would always ask why his hands were so raspy and dry. I didn't understand it then. I didn't understand it then. But years later, I entered the field myself, and then I understood. At just 11 years old, I started working in agriculture, and it wasn't my choice. It was a necessity. We couldn't afford extras, sometimes not even basics. Buying school clothes was so hard for my parents, so I decided to step in. So I woke up every morning at 4 a.m. to catch a ride with my field supervisor because my parents had their own shifts to make. By 5 a.m., I was in the lettuce fields. The rows were long. Walking them drained my body. My hands blistered from carrying and gripping a heavy hoe. My feet ached from hours of standing, and I had to focus constantly because one mistake you'd get yelled at and get sent home. The mornings were freezing. Dew soaked my clothes walking down the field. By noon, it was so hot, but I stayed layered to avoid sunburn. I wrapped bandanas around my head and my face, not for fashion, but to block the dust and sun. There was no cold water, no real breaks, just a 30-minute lunch break, usually sitting in the dirt, eating cold snacks. No time to be a kid, no time to breathe. Later, my father got sick, lung cancer. He had worked in agriculture since migrating in the USA at 17 years old. I can't help but think it was the pesticides and the fertilizers and the dust he breathed every day. My mother also became disabled, her shoulders torn from years of lifting potatoes over and over again. When my parents had to move 3 hours away from my dad's treatment, I stayed behind. I worked the potato harvest while going to high school. I worked to keep my family afloat. It was one of the hardest periods of my life, keeping my grades up, trying to graduate, and making sure we had what we needed to survive back at home. I'll never forget one morning during harvest, it started to snow, and no one told us to stop. We kept working. My fingers went numb, my socks were soaked from the snow, my toes froze. I stood there silently wishing that someone would tell us to go home, but they didn't. That moment never left me, not just because it was cold, but for the silence. The silence we're taught to keep, the silence that hides pain. You're expected to be strong, to not complain, to not break. I carried so much at a young age, and I know there's still children out there in fields, just like the ones I worked in. Carrying that same weight right now, I never had a childhood that way. I had responsibilities, I had pain, I had days where I didn't feel seen or heard. Just used as a small set of hands to get the work done for others. There are children still being robbed of their education, their safety, and their right to just be kids. I share my story because I know that I'm not alone. And I'm here today as living proof that this happens here in our backyards, in our communities, in our fields. No child should ever be forced to choose between school and survival. No child should have to give up their dreams so their family can eat. No child should have to endure numb hands, blistered feet, or frozen mornings in silence. I've watched classmates drop out of school to work full-time, bright, talented young people with so much potential pulled away from their futures by the weight of survival. That loss, that quiet loss of future leaders, artists, scholars is heartbreaking. And it exists, it hurts, and it changes you. I'm proud of where I come from, and I'm proud of how far I've come. And it shouldn't have to take in so much pain to get here. I speak today not only for me, but for every child who's worked in silence, every child who's had to grow up too soon, every child whose hands, like my father's, became tools for survival before they ever got a chance to just be them. Thank you for hearing me out, and thank you for fighting for children like me.
Thank you very much, Jacqueline, for sharing your experiences and the experiences of thousands and thousands and thousands of children, even today in the US, that we absolutely need to address. I would like to open the floor now to comments, remarks. Invite also our panel to comment on any of the pieces that they've heard so far. I've got various notes. I'm sure other people do, but I'd like to open it to the floor. I do want to ask, is there a Japanese UN office representative here? I wasn't sure if somebody was attending. Okay. I was just curious, ask them if they would like to speak. So open the floor. Anybody who would like to comment, and I open the floor to the panel as well. Any of the comments that you guys would like to make on each other. So I can start with something. And I think this is one of the things that is a big challenge when it comes to agriculture, and the fact that agriculture, and not just in sub-Saharan Africa, but elsewhere, remains one of the big challenges on child labor, is even though these are part of incredibly sophisticated and wealthy supply chains, tobacco, somehow we still can't get to this issue in the United States. And I think this is, obviously, I think there are historic reasons for this, but this actually raises one of the points that I would raise in my concluding remarks is, governments are responsible for a legal regime that creates a floor for these standards. So we're not having these discussions. We're having these discussions in the US because that floor doesn't exist. So I think this is an absolutely critical issue that all governments need to address.
There's someone raising hand online.
Yeah, oh, please. Yes, please do. Yeah.
Tim, can you, there's a person whose name is Samantha. Can you?
Oh yeah, Samantha.
Hi there. Can you hear me and see me, or hear me?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Hi. I wanted to thank you so much for this event. I'm not there in person. I can't see how many people are there, but I know that there's people that you're reaching today you don't even realize you're reaching. And the speaker goes, all I want to say is thank you so much for the work that you do. I'm an independent labor rights specialist. I have many different contracts. I wanted to focus in on the Ghana experience because I'd recently done some research on cocoa production in Ghana and child labor free zones. I'd studied child labor free zones, but in... Oh, is that going?
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, continue.
But in other countries. And I wanted to know more about the special considerations of child labor free zones in Ghana, because we saw it from a high level, but I know in other cases it really has to be different in each place. So I wanted to hear about some of the specific examples there. And thank you again all for your work.
Thank you. It kind of works, right? It kind of works.
Yeah, floor is open, for.
I think she has a question, so
Okay.
maybe SDG.
Yeah, yes, take Ghana.
You know about the dynamics of child labor in Ghana?
A child labor free zone, I think.
Actually,
how
didn't
it
grab
works.
her question well because of the break.
Mm-hmm.
Samantha. Hi, Samantha. I don't know if you can come again with
Hi.
a question, but the line
Yes.
kept breaking and I didn't actually get your question, please.
I was interested in the specific dynamics in cocoa production, and I'm thinking about where the children are coming from and how they're deceived often into working in the chocolate field. And if you can talk about how you've worked or how the child labor free zones has worked to prevent that.
Okay, thank you, Samantha. So I heard you wanted to know where the children who worked in the cocoa fields came from in Ghana and the dynamics of child labor that they are engaged in. So from the perspective of government through the Ghana Cocoa Board, a lot of children who worked in these cocoa farms have been identified as not children of these cocoa farmers. They are children who came from several neighboring communities and districts to work in these cocoa farms. And when they came, a lot of the questions, a lot of issues of forced labor were also attached to these issues, children working in these cocoa farms. And so from our study, it's been established that most of the children who worked in these cocoa farms are not children of cocoa farmers. We have what we call the Ebusa and Ebunu way of farming cocoa in Ghana. And these are people who come in, work for a period of time and leave. And when they come in with their children because of sometimes where to stay and all that. They come in with these children to work on these farms. And then when they are paid, they leave. Some also come to settle in cottages in these cocoa farms to work on these farms. And again, child labor exhibits itself in different dynamics. And again, I'm happy that poverty has actually been established as one of the root causes of child labor. But in as much as these children come to these cocoa farms to work, and they are not children of these cocoa farmers, it means that the cocoa farmers themselves need to understand that these children's lives are at risk. But again, child labor in agriculture, particularly in cocoa farms, cuts across. Again, we are seeing children working in the fishing sector, children working in the mining sector, and now a lot of attention is being driven to the mining sector, where the popular Galamsey issue, children working in small-scale mining sectors are found. And so basically the dynamics are different, but for the child labor free zone, we don't care about sector-specific approaches. We want to ensure that we are going by the integrated area-based approach. Whenever a child at risk or a child in child labor is detected, there should be systems in place, there should be structures in place, there should be responsive mechanisms to deal with that child, irrespective of where the sector the child is found in, such that children do not move from sector to sector and the problem do not compound itself for the government. And so once we are going by this approach, we think that once the concentration is given to a zonal area council and children at risk and children in child labor are solved and systems and structures are there to support that child, it means that the community themselves will own up that process and be able to take that child away. That is why we talk of strengthening systems and structures. We want to build capacity of child protection line agencies. We want to ensure that the sustainable processes of eliminating child labor, communities are given the needed support, they are strengthened. Community child protection committees are within the communities and they themselves, and I'm happy David talked about trust. Children can now come in and say that this is the problem I find myself in without even labor inspection detecting these children to be in child labor. So basically that's the foundation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other comments, either online or? Oh, yes.
And child labor, so I'm wondering, like, what can we do as organizations, different institutions to like strengthen the rights of children as a demographic while engaging on the actually violence to the government, even in the
Sorry, did you?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, the question was, what can we do? What, as organizations, here and abroad, and I think that the thing to do is to make some noise. We all have to make noise. And now is the time, because the structures that fight child labor are all under attack. USAID didn't do a lot of child labor specific work, but it helped families get out of poverty. It fed starving children, it fed families. The loss of USAID, the merging of that into State Department, that's not a good thing. We need to make the loss of those ILAB grants, half of those grants, half of that work in those grants, those $550 million in grants was undone. Some of it was right in the middle. So, they set up these structures to remediate child labor, much like Tony's, similar to what Tony's doing. And that was just cut off. It was amputated. And I live in DC. We made some noise. There were some protests, but we really need rank and file people all over the country. And this isn't just happening in the US. Governments overseas are cutting back on funding. There's just been a retrenchment, and we had good news with the estimate going down to 138 million, but I think we're going to see an explosion of child labor if we don't fix some of the changes that have been made. So go out, make noise, make some good trouble, as John Lewis used to say.
Yes, I've got two hands. Woman on the right here with the two sets of glasses.
Yes, in terms, thank you. In terms of actions to take, we here in this country right now are in the grip of a Congress and others that seem bent on just taking away everything and destroying democracy. So with that being said, any bill that is passed can be overturned by a new Congress. So with that being said, for anyone that lives in this country and votes, in 2026, all House seats are up for re-election and 33 senatorial seats are up for re-election. All right. Now, I'm not trying to tell anybody to vote in any way, because I think the important thing is that we have to vet candidates. We have to find out what their voting records are. We just don't go and pull a lever and say, okay, that's my party, and everybody's not perfect. But I think in terms of actions to take to try to overturn some of these things, the loss of funding, important funding, and this big ugly bill and so forth, we have to look for 2026 to try to see if we can overturn that Congress, get a few people in there, and they can work on amending some of these things that have been done. Right. So I think that's going to take the cooperation of everyone, faith-based organizations, the UN, governmental, everybody has to be involved in this. And I am appalled at what is going on right here in this country. It's like, I've lived a long time and I've lived through civil rights, marching and everything. And here I am back, right, marching again. So it's, it's very, very distressing. Yeah.
I think we got another hand back there.
Okay.
Thank you for your intervention.
Okay. Hi. So I just had a question. You were talking a lot about the horrible conditions that so many children unfortunately have to work within. But I'm curious, in your work against child labor, if that also intersects with work against labor conditions in general and working to improve not just children to stop children working in these conditions, but everyone working within these conditions as well.
I'm going to address that in my closing remarks. So thank you. Thank you for setting that up. Any other Comments, questions, observations? Anybody online also? Any other? Okay. Right, here we have another one.
Good evening, good afternoon, sorry. My name is Jamila Asanova. I'm maybe the camera is there. I'm Jamila Asanova. I'm representing Asia Development Alliance, which before was leading by the Hideki-san. Thanks, Hideki, for inviting me, my colleagues, to this event, because it's very important. The topic is great, actually. Because child labor is so important. Particularly, I'm representing Central Asia, yes, and I'm from Kazakhstan, but our neighbor countries like Uzbekistan, for example, child labor related with the cotton, with agricultural stuff is so high important, but the more important that this issue was raised here on such high level political forum podiums and when the decision makers are hearing about that issue. Because unfortunately in our countries is not a very topic when people cannot raise, on such high level. So first of all, thanks. But second, I would like to raise a question: what kind of innovations, or what we as a civil society, what we can do in the field on local level? Maybe some questions or some, tools which we can advocate. And thanks for panelists who can help me with this question.
Thank you very much. That's a really interesting question. That is one of those. That's one of those issues that I think we need to think about the way in which, unfortunately, the way media works these days. And if you're talking about making noise, there are ways to make noise that are more effective than others, but that noise has to be out there. What worries me, to be honest, about the general political dialogue, and it could be true for this too, is oversimplifying things. Things are more complicated than people think they are. And so it's important to convey the issue, the gravity of the issue, but also find ways to make it understandable to people. And so that's, I think, a key thing. Any other comments? Yeah.
Yeah, just
please.
Going to add, one of the challenges with Central Asia and cotton sector was that there wasn't a lot of civil society, because there was a dictatorship. So it was really difficult for civil society groups to operate. But they still did, at great risk, great peril. They went in and investigated. One of the things that really helped Uzbekistan eliminate its, and most of its child labor in cotton was the business community really came on and signed pledges not to buy Uzbek cotton. And I think that was somewhat easier because there was a dictator in charge of Uzbekistan. But getting business community involvement. I know Tony's is working at trying to create a coalition of business groups that weigh in on child labor. Because we have, frankly, we have an administration right now that cares a lot about what the business community thinks. So if the business community says you need to fund iLab, you need to fight child labor, hopefully they will start to listen. So
Thank you, Reed. Good point. Any other comments? Yes, Angelique?
It's not a question, it's a comment. In 2019, SDG 8 was reviewed. And during the 3-hour review, I think child labor was mentioned 5 times. Today, SDG 8 was reviewed, and in 2 hours and 15 minutes that they actually did the review, I think there were 3 countries or 5 countries again that mentioned child labor. So I think the question that really is in front of all of us that are sitting in this room, that are online, is what are we going to do about it, right? Like, how do we actually get child labor on the radar? And because I think there is incredible work. I know that there is incredible work that's happening on the ground around the world. But either it's not being talked about because actually, we've totally missed the goal, and not one person talked about it over there across the street. And I think, I know, Tim, you're going to come to this in your closing, but the fact of the matter is that SDG 8.7 has one of the earliest deadlines. Everybody is talking about 2030. And nobody is talking about the fact that the international community back in 2015 came together and said, okay, we realize that in order to achieve 2030, that whole agenda, we actually need to make sure that we've eradicated all forms of child labor in 2025. And so I think that that to me is like really frustrating that nobody is still talking about it. And at least nobody is really acknowledging that we've missed the goal by 138 million.
Right. Thank you for your comment. I would like to make one quick comment about that, though. When you think about it, it's interesting. 2015 was when the commitment was made. If you watch the trends, 2013 is like, well, we're on a serious downward trend here. It might have been aspirational to do so, but I think that people maybe looked at things and thought that we can continue at this rate, which we clearly could not and haven't. We're coming up on time.
May I just
please do.
I was with her in the room. I looked back and she was sitting just behind me, so I was surprised. But yes, I echo with Anjali. And actually, the reason why we organized this session is exactly the reason what you said. Unfortunately, because of the conflicts happening all over the world, etc., the attention to child labor is diminishing lately, unfortunately. So that's why we thought we should organize something. That's why we came all the way from Japan to organize this, actually. And I'm so glad that people came. And I think because we know we're missing target, but I thought this will be the opportunity for us to kind of renew our commitment. And we want to ask the government to renew their commitment as well. And we're having Ghanaian government representative here whose child labor free zone can be one of the innovative way to kind of scale up what our efforts has been trying to do. I think Ghanaian child labor free zone can be the model case for other countries as well. If we can do it in Ghana, we can do it in other countries as well. So that's why we are trying to make it a showcase so that it can be a kind of inspiring mechanism for others to duplicate and expand, especially in Africa, where the child labor has where they observe the largest number of child labor in agriculture as well. Yeah. So.
Thank you, Yuka. We are running up against time here, but first I want to thank all of the panelists for their presentations. It was really, really multifaceted, and I think it was absolutely fascinating. I learned a lot, and I'm not just saying that. And thank you all and everybody online who was able to attend. I wanted to conclude with a few remarks real quickly, and actually it goes to one of the comments that, or one of the points that came from the audience. Child labor is the canary in the coal mine of all other labor violations. You find child labor, you're going to find much more. If we're successful in addressing child labor, it's directly connected to improved family livelihoods. And that means better wages and standards for adult workers. That's why ILO Conventions 87 and 98 are so important in the overall child labor struggle. If adult workers don't have the right to represent their interests, and one of those is getting their children out of work and into school, it's a direct setback in this challenge. These commitments and obligations provide the framework for unions and civil society to represent broad interests touching on all aspects of labor. Without this space being present and effectively used, because we were talking about space here and issues that we are facing, the effort to eradicate child labor is doomed. Many of the best practices, such as the area-based approach to child labor-free zones, child labor monitoring, remediation systems in Ghana, rest on the importance of CSOs and NGOs' presence and capacity and their ability to do their jobs. It was, after all, a global network composed of NGOs and trade unions which initiated the worldwide campaign for ILO Convention 182. I fear today, however, that political space is shrinking for civil society in some countries, hampering their willingness, the country's willingness to address this problem. It goes to not being on the agenda. Even more than that, in some cases, people are under attack. So I would say a critical message for this moment is don't waste precious resources and goodwill. If you think about it, the reduction of child labor by almost 40% between 2000 and 2016 was one of the most successful labor right campaigns in history. I mean, really. But times are much harder now. The role of CSOs and unions can and must increase, and resources are critical. Unions and consumers were in the vanguard of this movement a century ago to implement child labor laws. Now, we're urging everybody to use their voices and their power and their commitment today as partners to accomplish this shared goal of getting this agenda back on country's agenda and addressing the child labor issue to eliminate by 2030, but at least make significant progress. So thank you everyone for coming. We really appreciate, once again, ACE for organizing our program here, and thank you all for coming.